Flight attendants, please prepare for takeoff.
Stolen by Ehlers to Wheeler, back to Ehlers, scores!
Kyle Connor has the Midas touch right now.
And another outstanding stop by Connor Hellebuyck.
Check the shoot, score! Oh, what a slick move by Mark Scheifele.
Ground Control, the official podcast of the Winnipeg Jets, hosted by Jets TV.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Ground Control, the official podcast of the Winnipeg Jets. I am your host, Tyler Esquivel, joined by 680 CJOB's Jamie Thomas, alongside with Mitchell Clinton of Jets TV. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time. Episode number 92 here. Got lots on tap, including an interview with Sportsnet's Harnarayan Singh. He sat down with Mitchell Clinton to chat about his career as a broadcaster and so much more. We'll get to that in a little bit. But first and foremost, let's talk about the 4-1 loss to the Vancouver Canucks, Jamie. Your thoughts from the press box?
Well, it had to happen eventually, right? When you have a winning streak of the like, that becomes, I wouldn't say bulletin board material, but the team is eventually going to get tired of hearing about it. And the Canucks had kind of righted the ship with their 3-game winning streak against the Ottawa Senators. Yes, it's the Ottawa Senators, but you start feeling good. And then, man, that speed they had, their two-man forecheck was something else. They had great sticks. Eventually you're going to have a tough night. The Jets had a tough night, had a hard time getting out of their own end. The one way you can look at it is the Adam Lowry line continue to drive play. Connor Hellebuyck was unreal to the second and third periods when Vancouver really took it over. But it's one night. Vancouver played really well. Just didn't do it so well themselves.
Yeah, the Jets, not a lot of puck luck in that one. I think Adam Lowry talked about it on Sunday after practice. You know, he went down for that shorthanded breakaway, and from where I was sitting in the game, I thought Demko got a pad on it and just stuffed him, but you know, he had him beat pretty cleanly and it just rolled off the end of his stick. And I think there were a few other plays like that throughout the game. Mitchell, the top 6 forwards, how have you seen them play this season? Obviously on practice or at practice on Sunday, Paul Maurice switching the centers, switching the wingers, however you want to look at it. Mark Scheifele between Andrew Kopp and Nikolai Ehlers, and then Blake Wheeler along with Kyle Connor on the outside of Paul Stastny. I think I have that right.
Yes.
Mitch, what do you see from the shakeup and how do you see it going ahead?
Well, the first thing that I would say to that is nothing's permanent. That's the main thing to keep in mind. I thought Adam Lowry actually said it quite well on Sunday when he said, you know, this could last a period, it could last a game, it could last a few months. So you're never committed to something full time all the time for the rest of the regular season. And plus, like that Kopp, Stastny, Ehlers line is something that Paul Maurice can go back to. I mean, they were analytically very good throughout their stretch together. And I think, you know, prior to the Canucks game, they had combined for something like 20 points over the course of a 3-game stretch, which is incredible numbers. So yeah, like that's something that they can go back to. However, you take a look at Connor, Wheeler, Scheifele when they were together, you know, they would have kind of this, at least analytically, this up and down kind of, you know, they would be real good one night and then just it wouldn't go for them the next. They'd come back real strong and then it would kind of drop down a little bit again. You know, so I think, you know, obviously we know that group has a whole lot of talent, a whole lot of skill, and has done some fantastic things for the Winnipeg Jets. And again, could be a look that Paul Maurice goes back to. But for now, you know, I think one thing that this does is it rewards Andrew Kopp for how he's been playing, but it's not even just like, hey, you're getting some points, so, you know, here's, you know, go up on the wing with Mark Scheifele. It's that Andrew Kopp's game can help Mark Scheifele and Mark Scheifele's game can help Andrew Kopp. And, you know, you throw Nikolai Ehlers on his off wing there, which has been just a fantastic spot for him ever since he went there. And I think you've got a lot of, you got skill on that line. You got speed on that line. You've got defensive presence on that line. But that defensive presence, if you will, with Andrew Kopp has also been putting the puck in the net for the Winnipeg Jets, which is also important. So I think there's lots to like about that line. And then I've been curious about putting Blake Wheeler and Paul Stastny together. Obviously, I'm not on the coaching staff, so I can't be banging on the doors or anything to give my suggestion.
I mean, you're just not in the bubble, Mitch. I mean, if you were, you'd be banging on that door.
We know a guy inside the bubble that can do this for us.
Yeah,
so.
I'm just curious about it because I'm just curious about it because like that's a group that, you know, and Wheeler and Stastny that played together in Germany during the lockout in 2012. So obviously it's, you know, and they're good friends. So I think there's something to that. And then you add the speed of Kyle Connor to that wing. And I think it changes how other teams have to look at that line. So I'm intrigued by it, and also happy with the fact that they were able to keep Perreault, Lowry, and Appleton together, because against Vancouver, I mean, they were standout good. So long story short, some things to like with this lineup shuffle.
Absolutely. And like you said, nothing is permanent. And I find it so hilarious that, going into Saturday's game against the Canucks, all the talk is, well, where does Pierre-Luc Dubois slot in? You can't break up Ehlers, Kopp, and Stasny. You can't do that. And then, you lose 4-1. You're like, oh, well, we better change up the lines here. We better.
2 days later.
2 days later. So anyway, we shall see where Pierre-Luc Dubois slots in, but that is a story for another podcast. Speaking of old reliable here, Derek Forbort and Neil Pionk, the Minnesota Monsters. I don't know if we want to give them some sort of nickname.
I
Jamie,
like it.
I'll leave that to you. You're more of a creative type in that regard. What have you thought of this pairing? I think they've been steady Eddie back there, very reliable for the Winnipeg Jets.
The only pairing that hasn't been touched, right, since the beginning part of the season. I think you can count on them in many aspects. The only time I've ever seen Derek Forbort really struggle, I guess, in terms of foot speed is against the Maple Leafs, and then last night against the Vancouver Canucks. And that is the only hole I've ever seen in this pairing together. But they move the puck well, they defend well. So like with Paul Maurice, I think that's your most reliable setup as you move defensive pairings around. And I know Paul was asked about if there's going to be some changes to the defense pairings as well. And that's one I'm not touching. I think that those two are going to be beside each other the rest of the way. They do a great job. I know Derek Forbort's mainly responsible with penalty killing. Neil Pionk is the second power play quarterback. So I'm not touching that unit whatsoever. They've been fantastic, and it's amazing the chemistry they've developed in the offseason and how it's carried over into the regular season.
Yeah, really interesting how just that offseason chemistry that was developed over, several months of practice has translated to the game. And like you said, I'd like to see that pairing stick together as we move forward. Mitchell, our last topic before we get to your interview with Harnarayan, Mason Appleton. He scores his first goal of the season. The lone goal against the Canucks was quite a ripper from the high circle there. What have you thought about his game? He's obviously sitting second on the team in shot attempt percentage at 59.3, a very strong indicator that you're having a good year. He seems to have really taken a step this season.
Yeah, and I think it's just a guy that's playing with another year of confidence under his belt. And I mean, you pair him with Adam Lowry, who is another standout for the Jets in terms of shot attempt percentage this season. And I think you're going to see some good things. And Appleton's a guy that's always had that speed. He's a guy that can get in on the forecheck and do a lot of great work kind of below the dots. And that's what I think makes him work so well alongside Adam Lowry is, Lowry's a guy that can work the cycle and, really grind the opposition down. Appleton's a guy that can do that, just maybe in a little bit of a different way. And he's got the speed to be able to keep up. And you add Matthew Perreault in on that, and you got three guys that are real good in terms of possession. So I think, number one, I think it's confidence. When he was asked leading into the Vancouver Canucks game about, the offense that Adam Lowry's putting up and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you always wonder if the guy's sitting there, talking about a teammate that obviously he likes. And then he goes, you know what, I gotta get myself on the board here. And then he just absolutely wires this wrist shot that was unreal. Ends up being the Jets' only goal of the game. But I think we're just kind of scratching the surface with what Mason Appleton can bring. And I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of steps he can continue to take throughout this season.
Yep. Just another year of experience definitely shining through with Mason Appleton this season so far. All right, interview time. Harnarayan Singh. Mitchell, I'll let you introduce this one as you had the chance to chat with him.
Yeah, I mean, he's worked over 700 games for Hockey Night in Canada, Punjabi. But as many of you may recall, earlier this season, he worked his first English broadcast as play-by-play commentator. Now, he'd been doing some rinkside reporting in English for a few years, but this was a big step to do play-by-play in English. It was great to have him tell his story, and the fact that the Edmonton Oilers were involved in his first game made it even more special. So we hope you enjoy our chat with Harnarayan Singh.
Hey, this is Nathan Beaulieu, and you're watching Ground Control, official podcast of the Winnipeg Jets.
We're honored on Ground Control to be joined by Harnarayan Singh, who obviously is a name that a lot of hockey fans will remember, if not from Hockey Night in Canada, Punjabi, also for the start of the season and the memorable start of the season that he had, calling his first English broadcast for Sportsnet on Hockey Night in Canada. Harnarayan, first off, thanks for taking the time. How are you doing?
Doing well. My pleasure to be here, Mitchell.
So the first question would be, you have a historical moment for yourself, and even for, a guy that grew up in Alberta. You're a guy that loves the game of hockey. How did you find out that you would be doing the English broadcast of play-by-play for your first game? I can just imagine it's like accomplishing a dream come true at that point.
Yeah, definitely. Given the situation with COVID, because of that, I actually didn't find out too far in advance, just a few days beforehand. And I was stunned. I was speechless, but I was stoked as well. This is something I'd been hoping for a long time. And to get the news that it was finally going to happen, it was really special.
There's a fantastic video of your two kids, you mentioned both under 5, reacting to seeing you on camera for that Oilers and Canucks game. Just as a dad, what was it like to see that, and when did you see it?
Yeah, they surprised me. My wife and my colleague on Hockey Night Punjabi, Amrit Gill, so they both kind of teamed up to do this, and I had no idea, and I saw it because I was on the English broadcast, so I didn't see it there, but they aired it on the Punjabi broadcast in a story. And so I saw it after the fact, and it was, it made me emotional watching it, because it brought me back to my childhood too. And, growing up such a big hockey fan, and later on in life told that it would be impossible for someone like myself to be a part of it. Now to see my kids and their reaction, it's such a Canadian moment in that sense too, right? My kids love hockey, but they're seeing women, they're seeing diversity, and they're seeing people from their community as a part of the game. It's huge. It is just absolutely huge for them to be able to see that. And it was a really special moment, something I won't forget.
Yeah, and you mentioned like the representation part of it. There was an outpouring of support for you afterwards, whether it's from colleagues or just hockey fans in general. You've said in previous interviews that representation matters. You faced a lot of people, like you said, who kind of told you, maybe you should find something else to do. But you wanted to be a hockey commentator, just like, so many Canadian kids. How does it feel to be part of that representation now?
Yeah, it's a huge honor. It's a thrill. It's amazing to be able to open the doors for others, and that's probably been one of the most rewarding experiences of doing this, is when I talk to other youth and get comments from them saying that we never would have envisioned our being able to be a part of mainstream media, but now that you've made it gives us hope, and it's so important. I think that, the face of Canada has changed a lot in the last few decades, and you want to have media represent that. And the reason why it's so important is because that's the only way to make diversity normal. And it also brings us together in terms of it shows that power that sport has, especially here in Canada with the sport of hockey. There's so many relationships and so much rapport with other people, friendships that I wouldn't have had it not been for hockey. And it changed my experiences growing up as a visible minority in Southern Alberta in a positive way, right? And I probably would have had a very drastically different experience had it not been for hockey. So that's why it's so important, and that's why it's a thrill for me to be a part of it, because I know how much hockey gave me in my life, especially in my childhood, and I want to be able to kind of give back. And this has been a really great way to give back, is to inspire others.
When Hockey Night in Canada, like in Punjabi, came out, I think I've read it that you kind of thought it was like people were curious off the start. And then one of the things that obviously people will remember is the Nick Bonino goal call in 2016. That kind of, do you feel that played kind of a big role in changing the mindset of the sports world?
It really brought us to the forefront in a way we had never been able to achieve beforehand. I think by that time, because Hockey Night Punjabi had been around since 2008, and so this is a long time coming. But that moment, the Bonino call, it kind of pushed us into the greater hockey world. the United States and beyond. And it was such an unbelievable, it wasn't just the call, it was what happened afterwards, being asked to come to be a part of the Pittsburgh Penguins Stanley Cup Championship parade, and a cult following in Pittsburgh, and standing in front of 400,000 fans. And, it was just surreal. And, there's so many moments. I wrote a book in the fall called One Game at a Time, and I get to talk about all those moments in detail, where Mario Lemieux's given me a hug and saying I'm a part of Pittsburgh Penguins history, and just surprising the players in the dressing room, and talking to Sidney Crosby, developing this lifelong bond and relationship with Nick Bonino himself, who's such a great guy. His wife's from St. Albert, Alberta, which is a great little connection that we have too. And it really brought us to the forefront in terms of also media attention too. Like, it was, HBO, it was, you name it. It was kind of, we were everywhere. And it was significant, I would say, in terms of getting myself and my colleagues at Hockey Night Punjabi more opportunities within the mainstream world.
It's interesting you mentioned St. Albert. I've got my wife's family has some family out in St. Albert, so very
Nice.
familiar place to me. We mentioned your kids earlier. You were once that age, growing up in Brooks, Alberta. I know I realized personally my passion for the game I played, obviously minor hockey, all that kind of fun stuff, but my passion was on the reporting side, and I definitely dabbled in some play-by-play. So I'm curious if you were like me and had something that, was your microphone and you were calling games when you were a little kid.
You can see it behind me here. My sister kept it, and there's the yellow and black toy microphone from Radio Shack that my parents got me when I was a kid, because I was so kind of fascinated and trying to emulate the announcers. And so I used that thing. It was one of my favorite toys. And I had a whole entire imaginary world where I would call hockey games, act out the players, but I was also doing the media stuff, the coaches and the GM, and then asking the questions as media, answering them, and just acting out all parts that you would see in a hockey broadcast. And it was pretty specific. Like, I had my toy cars, and they would line up as a parking lot. I had fictitious characters, and I would act out this whole entire world. And so we grew up in Brooks, Alberta, is where my parents were teachers. And then my sisters went to university in Calgary. And so we would come to Calgary on the weekends. And so the Calgary, the place where my sisters were staying, that would be the away arena, and the Brooks was the home arena. And it was just, so I acted out all of those. And that's kind of where, like, the obsession for hockey just continued to grow and grow. And the hockey card collection was probably unrivaled, between all my classmates and I. And it was a special childhood in that sense, especially growing up in the 80s when the Oilers and the Flames were really good teams, and Gretzky was there. And so you were surrounded by it anyhow. But it was a fun experience because of hockey. Because, otherwise at school, there was a lot of differences between my classmates and I. I was, one of the only very few visible minorities in this small town of 10,000, the only kid with a turban. And, we were vegetarian, listened to different music, spoke Punjabi at home. So hockey was the common ground that helped me.
That's amazing to hear. And you say the Oilers, and you say the 80s, and Jets fans will start to cringe, as I'm sure you.
I was going to say.
What was it about those Oilers teams that you loved?
Well, it had to do with number 99, and Wayne Gretzky was just the perfect ambassador for the game. I reflect back on it, and so my parents did this amazing job of making my siblings and I totally fluent in Punjabi as well, and we were learning scriptures for the Sikh faith, and it was, it talked about abandoning your ego and being respectful, and it was like, it was weird because I'm seeing Gretzky, and he's the best player in the world, but he had those characteristics, right? He was always respectful to his parents, especially his dad Walter. Then he was so respectful and giving credit to Gordie Howe and his teammates and everything, and so it was great to watch Gretzky and see it break all those records. And then when he switched from the Oilers to Kings, immediately we switched as well. And all of our memorabilia just switched from Kings to Blues to Rangers, and some pretty amazing moments of following him around as fans. And there's a whole chapter called Wayne's World in the book too about that obsession and the lengths that we went to when we were kids.
And you mentioned the book. I got to give you an opportunity to talk about it. Your book, One Game at a Time, My Journey from Small Town Alberta to Hockey's Biggest Stage, was released in the fall. How much joy did you take in writing that?
Such a special moment, and for my family and I think all the hardships. My great grandfather came in the early 1900s. My parents came in the 60s, and to be able to, I don't think they ever would have imagined that their story would be told as well, and to have it all in a book, and then where the passion for hockey began, but then all of the trials, tribulations, the struggles of growing up, being different in Southern Alberta too, and then having it all culminate into the dream coming to fruition. And it's really it's a story about defying the odds, but it's a great Canadian story because it really shows the power of hockey, and a lot of fun hockey stories in there, a lot of kind of behind the scene details of the broadcast world too. And so it's such a special, significant moment to be able to write a book about your own life. But where I am in my life, I never would have imagined I would be asked to write a book at this stage. But lo and behold, here it is. And it's really significant, really special.
It's on my list of books to read. And
Awesome.
Finally, one non-hockey related question for you. I was listening to your chat with Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick on 31 Thoughts, the holiday episode, and learned you're a big chai tea drinker. So I'm curious, is there a special signature recipe you have that I can borrow for a cold evening in Manitoba?
Yeah, definitely. You want to use some cardamom. You want to use some ginger in there. You want to throw some cinnamon as well, fennel seed. So you boil all that good stuff, and with your whatever tea bag you're using, and boil that for a good 10-15 minutes. And then if you want to add milk, if you can, I think it helps on a cold day, like you're saying. And there you have it. I like to add honey as well, but those are kind of my go-to ingredients, and it's good for the throat too if you're a commentator and a media member where we just talk all day long. So it's that there's a number of benefits, but that's kind of my go-to stuff in my chai tea.
Great tip, and great stories as well, Harnarayan. I really appreciate your time and the fact that you were able to join us on the Ground Control podcast. Thanks very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Shop where the players shop. Jets Gear and TrueNorthShop.com are your authentic team stores. Make sure to stock up on all your favorite Winnipeg Jets and Manitoba Moose merchandise today. Visit one of the 5 Jets Gear locations or shop online at TrueNorthShop.com.
Thank you so much to Harnarayan Singh for his time. That was a great interview with Mitchell. All right. Lastly, shout out to Dan on Twitter. You know who you are. You reached out to Mitchell, myself, and Jamie saying, hey, you guys should interview Harnarayan. And we did. So I hope you enjoyed the interview.
And we listened.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So looking ahead, 4 games against the Calgary Flames. I think we are aware of the challenges that lie ahead for the Winnipeg Jets. But Jamie, why don't you just refresh everybody about what the Jets are about to face?
Well, I think, you saw a team that lost 3 in a row, and the way this season is going, it caused a lot of fan bases to lose their minds. The Flames were having some issues. They went up against some pretty hard teams, and the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Montreal Canadiens had that players only meeting, and then came out and played oh so well against the Canadiens Saturday night in Montreal. But I think first and foremost, let's have this. Like, Jacob Markstrom has been tremendous. They have not had a goaltender of Mika Kiprasov's status since Kiprasov retired. So to have Markstrom play as well as he has been incredible. And apparently he's been a great guy in the dressing room. Chris Tanev has been another great addition in the offseason from the Vancouver Canucks, really stabilizing the back end. And then you just have, the top 6 you already know about. And then they have the one issue that's going on in Calgary, and it kind of comes at a bad time, is Sam Bennett has reportedly asked for a trade. So that is an issue that the Flames are going to have to deal with. And who knows if that gets dealt with in the 4 days coming up here. But the Flames are a handful. They've got a red hot goaltender right now. But I mean, listen, in 4 games, so many different things can happen. But at least you're having the same team, none of these one-offs that the Jets just have to deal with. And the Jets aren't coming off 3 consecutive days off or in terms of not playing a game. So Flames will be a handful, but I think the Jets are going to be better prepared and have a good matchup against this hockey club.
Excellent. And going forward, we're not sure how the roster is going to shake out. There could be some movement. One of the names that's kind of intriguing is Cole Perfetti. He's joined the taxi squad. He's got, half a week's worth of practices under his belt. He's watching the games. He was at the game on Saturday against the Canucks. Mitch, what have you seen from Cole Perfetti, and how do you think the Jets utilize him going forward?
Well, a guy, that's probably the thing that stood out to me most is he's a guy that's willing to put the work in. Like, you talk about how in the meat and potatoes of an NHL season, your practices are 30, 40 minutes. He went out the first day that he was called up for his first practice, skated for an hour with the group, and then skated for another hour with the taxi squad. So nice. Welcome to the NHL. Here's a 2-hour skate. But what I've really liked so far, and I think it stood out with a lot of the interviews that he's done, is the attitude that he has. He's like, if I get a first NHL game or I don't get a game this year, this is all a huge learning opportunity for me. He talked about, coming in on that first day, seeing everybody, in the training room, in the gym, getting treatment, doing everything that they possibly can to get their body ready to be their best on the ice. And he said that's going to be something that stands out to him. I've also seen him on the ice kind of have chats with Mark Scheifele, Blake Wheeler, Paul Maurice, and he seems to be fitting in really well. And he's just soaking up absolutely everything that he can. And I mean, if you're him, and this season, if it was a normal, say, hockey season, there's a chance that he probably ends up, back in the OHL with Saginaw, just maybe a similar path of Mark Scheifele. And so he's playing a lot of games, and that's a really good thing. But there's no Ontario Hockey League right now. So he's getting the chance to be around, these professionals, whether he's, with the Manitoba Moose, like he started the training camp down with them, or if he's, at the NHL level on the taxi squad, or whatever comes next for Cole Perfetti. He's using this opportunity to its absolute most. And I think that's the biggest thing that we can see from Cole Perfetti so far. What does it mean going forward? Obviously, like we said, lots of things can change. So we'll keep an eye out to see if number 91 continues to get on the ice with the Winnipeg Jets, but something intriguing to watch for sure.
Great number 91, by the way. Also adjusting our trivia. We have another number 91 that we talked about. One last thought on Cole Perfetti, Jamie. And it's a tough question to ask, because have you ever seen somebody so refreshing in terms of their perspective coming into an NHL camp? All of these hockey players that come through, whether it's Winnipeg Jets or any other team, that they all carry themselves a certain way. But Cole seems to be kind of standing in a league of his own in terms of just how respectful he seems to be presented. And not that the other guys aren't, but I just think Cole really showcases that part of himself. Even just referring to Mr. Cheveldayoff called me, I remember when I met Kevin Cheveldayoff for the first time, he introduced himself to me as Chevy. So it's such an interesting balance of like just how Cole has carried himself in these first few weeks.
Yeah, he's kind of got that shucks thing going on right now with the Winnipeg Jets. And if the best comparison I can go with is there were high expectations for Jordan Eberle when he was drafted by the Edmonton Oilers, a Regina kid. I remember him in a couple of camps, very down to earth, just a great kid, ready to absorb everything, but not at this level that Cole Perfetti is. And I think, the fact that Mitch just touched upon it, he doesn't know where he's going to be this year. And the fact that he's been given this opportunity to skate with professionals a lot longer than you ordinarily would, I can see why he's all wide-eyed and excited about it, because he would be doing nothing right now if the Jets didn't give him this opportunity. So there's a lot of his teammates in the Ontario Hockey League that wish they had the same opportunity. And I really appreciate the honesty and the humbleness that Cole Perfetti has displayed as a guy that was drafted 10th overall. It's not just like a first round pick. He's a high end first round pick. So it's been refreshing to see. But the best thing I can come up with is Jordan Eberle when his early days with the Edmonton Oilers.
Right. Well, we shall see how that all shakes out. And perhaps we'll talk about it on the next episode of Ground Control. On behalf of myself, Mr. Esquivel, Mr. Clinton, and Mr. Thomas, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. Thanks.
This is Big Ground Control, the official podcast of the Winnipeg Jets, hosted by Jets TV. For Jets news, videos, and more, head to winnipegjets.com.